There's also some pages out in the hallway. Just fill one of those out and pass it to the clerk. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and call our June 6th Common Council meeting to order. Megan, will you please take the roll? David? Nancy? Bartz? Remote? I'll come back. He said he is. Blanky?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Schmid?
Here.
Wetzel?
Here.
Moldenhauer?
Here.
Bartz? Oh, you know what? I'm on mute. Let me try that again. Sorry, everybody. We started the meeting, but I left it on mute. We've called the meeting to order. We're taking the roll, and the clerk is calling to see if Mr. Bartz is present. Okay. If he is, hopefully he'll pipe in. All right. Would you please
I'm
join?
here.
Oh,
Here.
say that again.
Dan Bartz is here.
Okay, caller 3. Thank you. All right, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first item on our agenda is the minutes of the council meeting for May 16th. Comments or questions from anybody on those minutes? All right, seeing none. Our next item is comments and suggestions from citizens present. For the older people that are here, you're the next agenda item, so you don't have to comment during this section unless you want to comment on something else. And with that, I would ask the clerk to call people up. Ken Berg.
Good evening, Mayor McFarland and council members. I'm Ken Berg. I live at 1201 Richards Avenue, and I am here to speak in favor of Nick McGriff as being your best choice for filling the seat on the 3rd District. I know you got some good choices tonight to talk about as far as other candidates. I don't know Tom Coles. I'm confident he's a good person with good intentions. I do know Terry Bear, and he's an excellent real estate broker. And again, I'm sure of his intention being legitimate and sincere, but they are not, in my view, the obvious choice for you tonight. Steve Board is a person who has been appointed by our mayor to some different city boards, so he's got some experience in that regard. But he also, 4 years ago, ran for the 3rd District when I had a vacancy. When I couldn't run for re-election because of term limits, there was an open seat, and Steve Board ran against Chris Rudin at that time, and he lost by 117 votes. In contrast, Nick McGriff, 2 months ago, ran for that same office and was beat by 2 votes. His opponent was a person who was funded by a political action committee out of Washington, D.C., and again, just to make you reference, I am in that district. I got 2 letters and a beautiful flyer, very impressive, cost a lot of money, but it went to all the people, and again, despite all that, I give a lot of credit to Nick because he lost by 2 votes. And I'm sure he was spent 10 to 1 or whatever the number, by a lot. So I'm pointing out that in contrast, 10 years ago, our Emily, when she was appointed to the council in the 1st District, Bob Mudler moved out of the district because of because of a house that he purchased outside the district. And she did win 4-3 in that particular appointment. That was by the council at that time. Our Dana Davis, 2 years ago, she did have also an opportunity to run. 3 other people, I think, ran at that same time because Tom Posh, the incumbent, got a job transfer and he had to move, and it led to an opening, and they had an invitation for people to apply. In the context of that, she did get appointed. 2 years ago, again, in the 5th District, a person by the name of Bill Litt was appointed when an incumbent chose not to stay on the job or quit for whatever reason, resigned, and it led to an opening. They solicited people to apply. Bill Litt was the only one that did apply, and he was appointed on that day. So I'm trying to show that in contrast to those, Nick's election is a lot different. He was in a bona fide election. Again, he lost by the 2 votes, and his opponent chose not to take the job when he was chosen through the election. And he never was sworn into office, which is one of the duties before you can actually sit down at that table. And so when I was wrestling, if my opponent didn't finish the match, the other person was declared the winner. So I just have a wrestling analogy to point out in sports that I think does have application. By default, because of him never being seated, I really feel again that Nick is your only real choice you have. So I'm asking for the 315 people that did vote in April 4th. I was one of them. I did vote for Nick, and I'm asking you to respect those voters that did vote on that day. And I'm asking you to not make a political decision if it's not Nick McGriff. I'm asking you to not go ahead and do that because you're going to affect your credibility as a governing body. If it's someone other than Nick, it's going to be viewed politically, and it's wrong. If you can't pick Nick for some reason, put it to a special election in 2 months and let people again pick between the 4 people you got here. If that's your decision. But I think the obvious choice should be Nick. Thank you, please, for listening to the comment.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Megan?
James Rumline.
Jim Rumline, 1042 Richards, Watertown, Wisconsin. I had the privilege of serving for 4 terms in this council area, and we had a number of problems that have come up during those 4 years. One of the things that you have as a councilman is you have to try and figure out what the problem is that you're trying to address. We're in a unique situation right now because we have the type of problems that we're facing right now are very new to us. We've changed the way we do business. We've changed the way we do everything that goes on in the city. Transportation is changing, communication is changing. How long does it take us to do something in the city? Well, it took us 10 years to build that park. It takes us 10 years to do anything. It takes us another 3 years to figure out how to get it done. So a councilman has to be able to look into the future at least 30 years to figure out what we should be doing today and not make decisions on what we need today, because by the time you get through doing it, it'll be out of date. Steve Board has that kind of experience, and I would encourage you to take Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rumline. Megan?
Marty Voigt.
Hi, I'm Marty Voigt, 319 Riviera Lane. I lived in the city my whole life. A lot of people, Emily, you know who I am, Myron, Dan Bartz was my neighbor. In my opinion, we have 2 options. Either we elect Mr. McGriff or we have a different election. It's America. He lost by 2 votes. If, let's just say, I want to ask you, any people, there's a Miss Wisconsin, correct? If there's a Miss Wisconsin, all of a sudden she can't do her duties, who wins? Who takes her spot? It's the runner-up. 2 votes, not 150, not 200, 2 votes. Either we have an election for Mr. McGriff and everybody else, or he is the winner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Voigt. Megan?
Tom Levi.
My name is Tom Levi. I live at 132 Harding Street in the 3rd District. And Mayor McFarland and members of the council, I'm here to address you tonight to consider Mr. McGriff as the only viable candidate for this post. We've heard a lot lately about elections and about the vote and 1 person, 1 vote. There are oodles of legislation across the country trying to regulate the vote. What we're trying to do is keep that integrity intact. And I would ask you, as members of this council, with your 3 options that Mr. Cheeseborough has outlined for you, that you should give great weight to the 315 people who voted for Mr. McGriff in the general election. I was one of those persons. And I speak for the constituents of that district and who they want as their representative. That's not to say that the other candidates aren't good. Mr. Board is a personal acquaintance of mine, and I think he's he'd make a fine alderperson. He's got business sense, and he has experience in various boards in the city. But I think the overriding tip the balance kind of situation here is that the voters have spoken, and they've said Mr. McGriff was the person that they would like to have as their 315, I should say, not everybody. But the 317 people that voted for Mr. Small could have their differences of opinion. The main thing is we need an alderperson who will represent the constituents and who is willing to go through the grilling battle of an election instead of simply applying to this council for consideration. So I would urge you to appoint Nick McGriff as the next alderman from District 3. Thank you for your attention today.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
your
Levi.
service.
Megan?
Tom Murphy.
Gentlemen, thank you. My name's Tom Murphy. I live at 103 Herman Street. I'm a Watertown resident for 8 years now. 9 years I've had my business here in town. I'm a member of a number of boards, school board for TSL, and also on the council at TSL for the church. My business venture here in town, I have a lot of commercial farm clients, home and auto clients here in town, and I've heard a lot of grumblings and complaining, and I thought I'd come and speak tonight about this. I can honestly say that I kind of watch from the sidelines. I don't get too involved in politics when it comes to coming forward and talking to people about it. But I'm here tonight to express my concern over the appointment of the 3rd District Alderman. Many people have mentioned this to me, that the election with Mr. Small winning the election by 2 votes and then not being seated as alderman. I know in speaking to the clients and friends and coworkers that many have expressed to me that they would like Mr. Griff appointed to the position. Of course, I recognize the city council will be appointing a person for that position. I hope by looking at the election and how close it was, that the people, the voters, obviously would want someone who truly wants that position and has spent his time and money fighting to win that position. People obviously want, unlike Mr. Small, who chose not to serve after being elected, someone who will serve them and wants to help them in our beloved city. I truly believe that you should appoint Mr. McGriff. I do not know him personally. I do not know where he lives or anything about his political linings. I've never even said hello to the man. Hello. But the people in his district know him. And by the 315 votes he acquired, I think that is all you really need to appoint him to the city council. This little anecdote for you. Abraham Lincoln once said, "How many legs does a dog have if you call his tail a leg?" 4. Saying that a tail is a leg doesn't make it a leg. This is also true when a governing body goes against the voting residents of their community and appoints someone other than the person whom they voted for in the most recent election. The appointment doesn't make the person the representative that the people want. A 3-point swing in the election, no one would be dealing with this right now. I believe the best person for that position of alderman of the 3rd District should be the one who was voted for in this case, not the person who ran and didn't take the seat, not someone who is thought to be a good choice by the council, but the person who fought for that position through the election and almost won. Mr. McGriff should be your choice, as he was the choice for 315 people in his district. Thank you for hearing my thoughts.
Thank you.
Jean Schmidt.
I just want to say that running elections require time, money, a lot of sacrifice, and I have nothing against the other candidates, but I'm from the 3rd District, live there, and I think when you work that hard, you lose by 2 votes. The other person decides to get out of the position. 315 people spoke up for Nick in their vote. Nick went door to door. Nick spent money. Nick had the support of the district because he was one of the ones running. And his hard labor, his work, his sacrifice should have everyone here that's voting tonight their support for that kind of person that would do that to win an election that he only lost by 2 votes. If he doesn't get this position, then you've got to question the democratic process in Watertown. I would say it wouldn't be fair to tell 315 people we had a special meeting and we voted for someone else that didn't even knock on those doors. That's not democracy. It's more like socialism. So everyone with a clear conscience, in the Bible it says the just balance is blessed of God and a false balance is not. So I would support the 315 people that voted for Nick. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Schlamer.
Schlamer.
Schlamer, sorry.
Yeah, my name is John Schlamer. I live in the 3rd District at 500 Hall Street. I'm just here to voice my support for the choice of Mr. McGriff. I echo all the comments that you've already heard. He went door to door. He came to our door. He talked to my wife. He worked hard. The other candidates very qualified. I look forward to seeing them also maybe campaigning in the 3rd District so they can make a choice. But for tonight, I think the choice is obvious. Mr. McGriff, 315 votes. That's all you need to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Callis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Callis, and I live at 1217 Douglas Avenue. In light of everything that's been said, I'll be very brief. Last April, there was an unprecedented election for City Council in the 3rd District. The winner beat his opponent by 2 votes, then, to everyone's surprise, declined the seat for personal reasons. So now the question before the council is, how do they fill this seat? Will they choose the person who lost by 2 votes, or will they pick someone else? Someone who never had to collect signatures to get on the ballot, nor spend any time or money asking for the support of their constituents. In short, will the 3rd District Council person be chosen by the people who live in the 3rd District or by members of the City Council who do not live there? To me, the answer is obvious. The position should go to the person who got 315 votes and finished 2 votes behind the winner, not to someone this council prefers. Choose wisely. Representative government is at stake.
Thank you. Before I close public comment, would anyone else like to comment? We do have another opportunity at the end of the meeting as well. All right. All right, let's go to reports. You have the Finance Committee minutes from May 8th, the Watertown Public Library from May 11th, the Committee of the Whole from May 16th, the RDA from May 17th, Public Works from May 23rd, and the Downtown Main Street Task Force from May 24th. Does anyone have any comments or questions on any of those minutes? Mr. Lampe?
I have my usual litany.
That's okay.
Starting with reports, 6B, Watertown Public Library. I call your attention, first of all, to 5B or A, one of those things regarding the parking piece. That was noted as a proposal that was brought forth by a developer for the library. I want to reinforce there that the conclusion of the meeting was no conclusion. Essentially, the next thing that is on tap is a proposal back from the developer to the library, which has not been received as of today.
Any others?
I have more.
Please continue.
Okay, 6A, I want to call your attention to a memorandum of understanding that is essentially being signed between the library board and the city of Watertown as it pertains to the police department. This is a particularly important MOU as it pertains to the security of the town square and the entire campus, because this is one that essentially offers instant access to the extensive camera system that is in the library to police if there is an emergency. So looking forward to seeing that come through.
Continue.
All right. The other one that I have that I want to call your attention to is 6B 3 regarding the room spaces. You'll notice there that there's a little bit of discussion elsewhere in here about the agreement between the city and the library in terms of maintaining the restrooms, which again I think should continue. But the new point that was raised here is the use of other library spaces, particularly in support of town square events. And so there is an opportunity to support some of the performers, some of the other folks who are coming into the area, essentially give them staging space and whatnot. So I think that that's going to be another important opportunity ahead of us to basically get those two pieces of property to interact.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I got one more.
Yes.
I
No, I don't mind.
keep
That's
going.
why it's on the agenda, so.
Okay. Last one I want to talk about is actually in the RDA meeting minutes, and this is more of a request, I think. On 7CA2, there's mention of the history wall. I think that has been finalized, and I think that one of the things we still need to schedule is just a thumbs up. We're good.
I was informed about it yesterday, and Barton provided one comment, and that comment is kind of getting flushed out.
Okay, but we're going to have that back to council to give our
I
sign
don't,
off?
the historic art wall, I don't believe has to come to council. The only, the content, the council has the veto authority over, but I emailed that out to everyone,
Right, and that's,
and no one objected.
well, that's where my question is. I mean, should we take positive action on saying it's great?
I don't think that's necessary. I mean, Stephen, you can comment.
The city doesn't have to provide a specific statement that it won't be enforcing its veto. The veto right would allow the city to just come in and say that we're vetoing a portion of the project or raise an issue if we have one.
So how would the council do that if they wanted to veto?
They would,
They would notify us that they want a veto, we'd put it on the agenda, and then they would note that there's a veto.
Okay.
and I would just remind so that was a text that was emailed with a deadline, because obviously that thing's gonna go into production. So, are you done?
I'm done. I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure that we've had this conversation, that nobody has said, wait, stop.
I haven't heard from anybody.
All right.
Thank you. Anybody else on minutes, reports? Alrighty. Okay, our next item is old business, and this is to take action on the appointment of a District 3 alderperson. The city attorney has provided a memo. Just for the sake of everyone in the room, I'm just going to highlight kind of the process. We're all on the same page. So the city clerk is going to draw names for the order in which the applicants will present. Each applicant is going to have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak to the council. Once each applicant has presented, I will ask the council members if they have any questions. For every question that's asked, the applicant will have a maximum of 1 minute to respond to that question. After all the council members' questions have been answered, I will open the floor to nominations of an applicant. I will determine the first council member to put forth a nomination and will ask for a second to that applicant. If the applicant receives a second, there will be a roll call vote for the applicant. And if the applicant receives 5 votes, they are the successful candidate. If there is no second, or if the applicant does not receive a majority of the votes, being 5, the motion will fail. And then I would start the process over by asking for a motion and a second. We would continue the process I just described. If all of the applicants have been nominated and at least once, and there are no successful applicants, the 2 applicants with the most votes will be permitted to stay in the running, while the other 2 would be removed from consideration. The council would then conduct a roll call vote, voting the last name of the individual who they would like to be appointed to the position. If there is a tie between those 2 candidates, I would be breaking that tie. Once the applicant is appointed, they take their oath and they sit down and they start doing business right away. So Are there any questions from my colleagues? Yeah, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions and a couple of concerns. Nowhere in this proposal for the selection process is there any opportunity for members of the council to address the individual that they care to support, or to address any issue that is important. We've heard from many members of the public. We have obviously opportunity to hear from each of the candidates, but I think it's very important for members of the council to be able to present their point of view, the rationale for who they support and why, and have an opportunity to try to convince other members of the council. That's the whole essence of a city council, to discuss, to convince, and to find the best way forward. Under this rubric, there's no opportunity to do that whatsoever. I don't think that is right.
I think to address that, I'm open to just submitting between steps 4 and 5 an opening and closing of comments from council members.
Alternatively, under a standard motion, the council would have an opportunity to discuss before the roll call vote.
Okay.
And so that would typically fall within number 7. After the initial motion is made, all the
Between-
council members would,
That
after it
makes
was
more
seconded,
sense. Sure.
all the council members would have an opinion, a
Okay.
chance to discuss that candidate or any other candidates that they think are appropriate.
Okay.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to suggest is this is a voting process where we're being asked to vote against people. I prefer to choose among the 4 and pick the single person that I want to vote for. It appears, if I'm understanding this right, that whoever gets nominated first is going to get an individual council vote under the, under the terms of this procedure. When somebody gets 5 votes, the election process is over. The others don't get a vote. So if in fact a council member wants to support a candidate that wasn't nominated first, and somebody gets the requisite number of votes, there's no opportunity to vote for or to make the case in favor of the candidate that didn't even get a vote.
I think what I'm hearing from the city attorney is there's the opportunity to comment on applicants after there's a motion and a second, just like we would on any other business before the council.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't think the approach of any city council member ought to be micromanaged in advance to the point where the way that the council member wishes to address this important issue is precluded because they have to vote or speak to a candidate for or in opposition, which may not be the candidate they really support. And to conjure up arguments against somebody just so you can get farther down the line to be able to support the candidate that you feel is best is not the way that I think good government runs. I don't want to sit here and come up with reasons why people shouldn't vote for a candidate that may not be the candidate that I support. I want to support the candidate that I think is the best and will serve the city most effectively. So the opportunity to speak in that manner as a member of the council and to have opportunity for every member of the council to do exactly the same thing and to listen to the arguments and to draw from that the basis of hopefully selecting the very best candidate, I think is the way to proceed. And then I don't know where this provision in number 7 comes from, which says an applicant needs 5 votes to be the successful candidate. I've been involved with council selection of replacement candidates to fill positions, and the last one that I was personally involved with and voted on that I can remember was when Mayor McFarland was chosen as the alderperson in the 1st District. And I went back and I have gotten the minutes, and the election that night was Alderman, it's not Alderman at the time, but current Mayor McFarland received 4 votes that night, and another candidate received 3. There was no requirement for 5 votes to be selected, and that night, and the minutes reflect it, the vote was 4-3, and Emily McFarland was selected as the alderman for that district. And I've looked through the statutes. I cannot find any basis for the requirement that there be 5 votes, and the history of the selection process indicates that, at least in some instances, less than 5 votes was sufficient for choosing the replacement.
So I can handle the first one. I am totally comfortable having between steps 4 and 5, an opening for commentary from the Common Council. We'll open it, everyone can speak, we can close it. And then we can take a motion after that. That should cover, right?
Well,
That would
having the
allow-
opportunity to speak would be
Okay.
wonderful. I just think everybody's going to make their presentation. Everybody's going to have an opportunity to be nominated and seconded. And for those who are, then I would assume there would be just a single vote. And what I believe the procedure was when we voted for a council president was that if more than 2 candidates were running and nobody received the majority, then the candidates with the fewest votes would drop out, to the point where ultimately there are 2 people that receive the final votes, and I would assume the one that got the most, not necessarily 5, would be the selected candidate.
So I interpreted the 5 as majority. And I
That's
presume that night, considering there were 7 voters, 4 was the majority.
That
So-
would be my presumption. I wasn't.
So I was there and I don't remember. But considering there was 4 and 3, I presume.
I think there
it
was
7.
there was an 8th vote for somebody else.
Oh,
It's just not
there you go.
recorded, because there were 8 members of the council that night, 4 for 1, 3 for 1, and it doesn't say it in the minutes, but it was either an abstention or the 8th council member didn't voted for one of the other candidates. And there were like 5 or 6 candidates that night.
I'm going to go to Mr. Schmid in just a second. I love that there's so many people here. Government is a little weird this way. You can't talk during this part of the meeting. I apologize. So we have comment at the beginning and comment at the end, and we can't go back and forth with the audience during it. So I just don't want anyone to have any question about that. Mr. Schmid? Yep. Mr. Voigt, we can't comment during the meetings. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know it seems awkward and weird, but it's kind of, it's the way our meetings are structured. So there's comment an opportunity for the public to comment again at the end, but we just can't comment back and forth with the public during the meeting. So, Mr. Schmid, please use your microphone. Thank you, sir.
I would call for the order of the day on this specifically, because I'd rather have the candidates that are present convince me why they're best for that position, and not my colleagues on the board to try to convince me why the person they're supporting is best.
I missed what you said. You want to what?
Call for the order of the day to stick to the agenda as, with the instruction as published.
Seriously, Eric.
Yeah, I'm that guy.
Let me just get out my cheat sheet. I don't know that one. Call for the order of the day? Stephen, can you help me out?
I'm using my cheat sheet.
It would be essentially calling the question. He's asking for us to follow the procedure that's printed on the memo that was provided. So it would require a second, I believe, and then there's no discussion or voting on it. Or there's voting, but there's no discussion.
Okay, so Mr. Schmidt, you're making a motion to call the question.
No, call the question, it's different. It's the ability to interrupt so that we stick to what's published and what was presented to the community ahead of time and published in the agenda that we have and follow as printed. It's just an interruption thing. No vote necessary.
Yeah, so you're asking to end the debate?
Well, we have-
I'm sorry, this one is beyond my
Well,
intellect.
we don't have a debate because we don't have anything we don't have a motion on the floor yet.
We're having discussion.
Yeah.
Do you have any guidance for me, Stephen? It's your opinion that he's asking to call the question?
He's asking that we get back on the agenda. It's your call as to whether or not we're sticking to the agenda currently and whether or not you want to move forward with the procedure or if you want to allow other council members to ask questions or
Okay,
address what's going on.
so I've heard Mr. Smith, so what I'm going to do is ask if there's anyone else that wants to comment on the procedure. That's what I'm willing to continue with. So I'm just going to make sure no one else has a comment. Mr. Lampy.
Very short. I just wanted to call Alderman Smith your attention to number 10 on the procedure, which does have basically what we do if there's multiple candidates who do not reach a majority. So I did see that in the original procedure.
Okay. Anyone else that hasn't commented on this topic? Mr. Moldenhauer?
See us have a discussion among the council, and we should have to bring forth our comments of why we think a certain person should get that job. I think it's important for government to be open and transparent, and I think this council has to go on record looking at that. And if you were well, I won't go any further with anything else, but for right now, I think this should be discussed by the council. After these other comments were made, we get to that point, we should have also a chance to make our viewpoints heard.
So we will make that interjection. So I'm going to repeat. Megan's going to pull people's names. Hope you've done that by now. We've given you some time. Each applicant's going to have a maximum of 5 minutes. We'll ask them questions. They'll have a minute to respond. Once they're done responding and everyone has presented, I will open the floor for us to comment. And then I'll close it, and then I'll ask for nominations. Everyone copacetic on that?
And then how will we vote?
We will vote the way it's described in the memo. Any other questions?
I just feel that to be handed a procedural script by the city attorney is not the intent of the process of our council selecting its replacement member. And in this memo, our city attorney quotes from state statute 6211. In 6211, a different section, not subsection 1, but subsection 3, that portion of the state statute says the council shall be the judge of the election and qualification of its members. In other words, that we would be the ones to set the procedure based upon criteria that we feel is appropriate. Not be handed a script which is completely outside the scope of the autonomous decision-making process of the council. And what I'm saying is, this procedure is different than council replacement procedures in the past. There has never been that I'm familiar with, and certainly that covers the recent past, there has never been a one-by-one vote that could actually preclude anybody even receiving votes that has put their name forward. Every candidate that has put their name forward, who is nominated and seconded, should be in the class of people who are legitimate recipients of council votes. Not the first one up to bat has opportunity to get the only votes and everybody else is just out of luck.
Mr. Smith, I just want to clarify, and then I'm just going to clarify. The intention of the memo is you have to have the majority of the vote.
Correct.
If someone wins the majority, the remaining vote serves what purpose?
Well, when there's an even number, there's the serious question of whether a majority has been received. In other words, it would have to be 5 if 8 people are voting. But if it were a multi-candidate field, the majority could very well be 3 votes. 3 votes for the winner, 2 for second, 2 for third, 1 for fourth. I mean, there are just a lot of ways that an election result occurs. And I don't see the point of not having every candidate that's nominated have an equal opportunity to receive the votes from each council member. That would be a single election vote among all of the different candidates.
Mr. Wetzel?
Okay, just to be clear, you're saying after the candidates make their appeal, we have the opportunity to question them.
Mm-hmm.
After that, you'll open up to all of us to discuss
Mm-hmm.
openly. And then to Alder Smith's question about voting, when Alder Davis was put up for a vote the first time, there were 3 candidates, if I remember right. A lady, a man, and yourself, 4. And we voted, and she, through whatever, luck of the draw, whatever was the first one to be voted on.
No. Actually, was not the first one to be put forward. Mr. Romline put forward the first person. And that person did not get a second.
Okay, yeah, and then when we voted, you received the majority, and that ended it, and we were done. That was our precedent. That's what we've done in the past.
And that's what's described here.
Yes, and Alder Licht, when he was running, there were 2 candidates, and the other one did not show up. He was the only one who showed up, so whatever, he was unanimously put in.
Ms. Davis?
So I'd like to make a motion that we take this memo as presented to us and we add between steps 4 and 5 an opportunity for the council to discuss the presentations. And then after that time has ended, we continue on with the rest of the memo as stated here.
Can I second that?
Yes. So we have a motion by Ms. Davis, a second by Mr. Lampy. Any discussion that hasn't been discussed? Mr. Moldenhauer?
To the point that Alderman Smith made, if we were to get a nomination of a person and a second, that would go to a pool. And then anybody who has a nomination with a second is in that pool. And anyone that cannot get a second would be out.
Mm-hmm.
And then we draw from the pool.
Okay. All right, I think we've had discussion on this. We have a motion and a second to insert comment discussion of the council members that'll open and close between steps 4 and 5. We have a motion and a second to then proceed as described by the city attorney and as we did during Ms. Davis's. Yes, Mr. Lampy?
Alderperson Moldenhauer, I just wanted to clarify, are you suggesting that you want to do a modification to approving this to basically change?
If we can get a nomination and a second, then that person's name gets in a hat. And anyone else that would come up with the same thing with a nomination and a second would be in that same hat. Anyone that cannot get a second on a nomination would be out.
So you're asking to amend the motion?
Yes.
So when you say hat, this still isn't a random, this is a pool. So you're basically looking to have multiple candidates on the floor, and then we would
And
basically
you
go
draw
around.
from, but they must have a nomination and a second to get to that point.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend this procedure we have a motion to amend the motion made by Alderperson Davis and seconded by Mr. Lampy. That motion to amend would essentially allow for any candidate that receives a motion and a second to be in a pool.
We would vote on.
That we vote on.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion to amend? Second by Mr. Smith. Yes, sir.
Just to make sure that it's clear as to what the resolution's going to be here, once all the candidates are placed into a pool that are eligible to be in the pool, is it going to be whoever gets the most votes in that pool is the selected candidate? Or is it going to be that the top 2 vote getters, if nobody gets more than 5? Or how are you guys going to determine who the winner once you vote on the candidates within the pool? Just so that it's clear. Currently in the memo, it says what happens if a vote fails or what happens there. So I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of what they're going to be voting for.
I believe number 10 answers that. Number 10 answers that, doesn't it?
Not if we're changing the way we're voting.
Yeah, Mr. Blanky.
So I just want to ask for a clarification, and I think the simplest way to describe it is, are we going to choose the 3rd District Alderman the same way we would choose, say, the council president? We take nominations, we vote, and we vote until there is a winner. Is that how I'm understanding this? Because that seems like
I'm not in favor of that. That's anonymous.
We can't
no,
do
it would be
we can't
open
anonymous.
vote.
Yeah.
I don't mean secret ballot. I just mean
can't do that.
in the fact that that would be the method.
Yeah, we can't do secret ballot. The law doesn't permit that. But I think what Mr. Blanky, and stop me at any point if I'm wrong, I think what you're asking is, are we opening it up for nominations? Like I'm going to say, like, oh, would anyone like to nominate Mr. Cheeseborough because he was an applicant? And then you say yes, and you say yes, and then Megan nominates Chief Tesh, and then Mr. Rollenhauer seconds Chief Tesh. Now they're both in the pool, and then we vote on both of them.
Yes, we would take a roll call
That's what
vote.
I'm understanding.
Yes, that. Just want to make sure it's clear before we get into the process.
And I think what Steven's asking is if we take a roll call, let's say 2 people get into the pool, and we take a roll call vote, and the vote is 4-4. Is that what you're asking?
My initial concern is what if Alderman Smith's scenario plays out, one person gets 3 votes, one person gets 2 votes, another person gets 2 votes, and then the last person gets 1 vote.
You're asking, does the person with 3 votes win?
Does the person with 3 votes win, or does it go down to the people that got 2 votes each get a runoff, and then whoever wins that one goes against the person that got 3 votes, or is it?
And this is if the motion to amend passes.
Correct.
Okay.
I guess I'd like to echo the intent of Clause 10 here and further modify the motion if all are amenable, basically, so that if we are in a situation where
Hold on a second. How about, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I actually get to do that. Let's do this. We have a motion to amend. If it passes, can we then work through your scenario? Because then we're at an amended full motion. I don't want to have a motion inside a motion inside a motion. Like, right now, we have a motion on the table to amend the original motion made by the 1st and 2nd District that would essentially create a pool for anyone who gets a 1st and a 2nd. And then we cast votes on those people. That's all we're voting on right now, is if you want to have that process, or you want to have the process that's stipulated in here with the interjection of everyone commenting between steps 4 and 5. Is everyone clear on what we're voting on? Okay, cool. So, Megan, please take the roll on the motion to amend the motion. This is government, people. Thanks for coming tonight. Go ahead, Megan.
Moldenhauer. Davis.
No.
Lampy. Bartz.
No.
Blanky.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Schmid.
No.
Wetzel. Motion passed 5-3.
Okay. We are now at an amended version of this procedure. The 2 things that have changed, 1, we'll have a step between 4 and 5 for everyone to comment. And then 2 is At step 7, I will open for nominations, and I will seek nominations from the floor. Anyone who gets a first and a second is in. Questions? Now your question is germane. So, if there are 3 people out of the 4 that get a motion in a second, and it's 3 votes, 2 votes, 2 votes, 1 vote, so everyone gets a vote. Are we saying the majority of the vote getters wins? Or are we saying the top 2 go and then we do another vote?
Move that the top 2 survive any round in which we do not arrive at a majority conclusion, or the first round.
Majority?
Well, there would be a majority of the votes. If someone gets the most votes, they're majority of the vote.
Yes. So if we don't get that on the first round, I'd like to see everybody but the top 2 eliminated.
Okay, so if we have a pool of applicants and someone gets the highest vote on their own, are we saying that that person is the person? And if there's a tie, like one person gets 4, or one person gets 3 and the next person gets 3, then those top 3 have a runoff? So I want us just to acknowledge that I think we're inventing a brand new way. Like, this isn't the way we use for Alderperson Davis. So I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Yes?
My concern with this process is, it's 1, muddying the waters, but 2, we're breaking away from the 2/3 rule by going simple majority. And so that's my concern. So if this board is going to be the one to do it, then we should have a 2/3 majority or 5 out of 9 to determine the primary candidate, not just the person who gets 3 votes, the person who gets 4 votes, and that's the majority decision. 2/3 is used in most major issues, and I think we should stick to that.
So right now we only have 8.
So in that case, it'd be 50-50. If there's a tie, then you would split it, then that would give us 5, and that would still be the majority, definitively.
I'd like to caution us, this is really precarious ground we're on, where we're making this up on the fly. Then we have arguments about, well, no, that's not really what I wanted. I think this is really a dangerous method for going about choosing and making this a really important decision.
Okay, I'm going to try to level us up. And we do need to answer a question for the city attorney yet. So we have this amended version with the comments. I think we're all clear on that, the comments from the alders. And the amended version of this motion would allow for any applicant who gets a motion and a second to be in a pool, and then we would vote on every single person in that pool. Please restate your question, and we need to come up with an answer.
So my question is, if nobody in the pool gets 5 votes, is it the seat awarded to the individual who gets the most votes? Or is the top 2 vote getters going to go back for another round of election?
Point of order, don't we have a motion on the floor that either needs a second or?
No, we don't.
Yeah, what?
Stephen, can you rephrase that? I'm going to write it as you say it.
It's trying to get us there.
If no one gets
If
5 votes.
none of the pool candidates get 5 votes, is the highest vote getter appointed as the District 3 candidate or alderperson, or do the highest 2 vote getters have a runoff vote?
Okay.
And if that ends in a tie, is the mayor breaking that tie, or what method are they using?
Oh, man. Okay. I don't know that I can make this much bigger because we only have Notepad. I'll move this down here. All right, you guys, these are the questions before us. Now, the motion, we will obviously take a vote on the amended version of this, and it could go either way, but I want to make sure that if if it goes one way, that we have this question answered, so I want us to hash this one out. So if no one gets 5 votes, is the highest vote getter the winner? Let's just go simple. I'd love to not have long, yes, no? What are you thinking?
You ask the question as a yes or no.
If no one gets 5 votes, is the highest vote getter the winner?
No.
Oh,
Okay, so I'm hearing no's. So, the highest 2 would then have another vote?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, I'm gonna write that in.
Number 10 states if all applicants are nominated at least once and no successful applicant has been determined. A successful applicant gets a majority. Isn't that defining a successful applicant? One who gets a majority?
I think what we're describing here and what's in number 10 are quite similar. If that ends in a tie, do I break the tie?
I understand that, but if that's 3-2-2, nobody got the majority, so there was no successful applicant. So it says the next 2, the top 2 go on.
And that's what we've described here. So I heard us say that this first question was a no, and the second question was a yes. So then if we only have 2 people running, and if that ends 4-4, do I break the tie? And that is a yes. Okay. So we should amend this to say that. So I am going to seek a motion to amend this version that reads that if no one receives 5 votes, the highest vote getter is not the winner. The highest 2 would have a runoff, and if that is a tie, the mayor will break the tie. Okay, second by Mr. Lampy. Is there a second to that? Or a motion by Mr. Lampy, is there a second to that? A second by Mr. Wetzel. So we are voting on the amended, on making this addition to the current procedure. And then we will vote on the whole thing. You don't have any other questions, do you? Okay. Okay, so everyone clear on that we're just voting on this getting added? And then we'll vote on the big changed one. All right, Megan.
Lampy. Bartz.
Aye.
Blanky.
Aye.
Smith. Schmid.
Aye.
Wetzel.
Aye.
Moldenhauer.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Motion passed 8-0.
Okay, so now we are at an amended version. I'm going to highlight it once, and then we'll take a vote. And then I swear we will allow you people to come up here and talk to us about why you want to join us. Okay, so the amended process we're at right now is to take this version, and between steps 4 and 5, we'll have discussion between ourselves up here around the U. In step 7, we will open the field for nominations. Anyone with a first and second will get into a pool. We will take a vote on every person in that pool. If no one gets 5 votes, if no one gets 5 votes, there is no winner. We will then take the top 2, have a vote. The majority there would win. If there's a tie, I would break the tie. Did I summarize that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to vote on that. If that fails, we proceed with either trying to amend this process again or going with the process that is put before you all. Is everyone on the same page? I'm looking for you guys to say you're on the same page. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable voting. Are you on the page? We're on the page? I'm not saying it. Yeah, you have a question?
A comment. What we've just approved as amendments and modifications to the agenda tells me that we've already made a decision who we're voting for without giving the candidates an opportunity to present their case. That concerns me by my interpretation of this process, because we want to modify this before we even hear from the candidates on why they should be in the position. And that's deeply concerning, that we want to change the process before we give all 4 candidates a chance to speak and tell us why they should be in this position. By the time each one of them speak, we should know definitively who we're going to vote for, not ahead of time making our decisions. So we're going through and changing this whole process because it tells me that a lot of people have already made their determination before hearing from the candidates present to tell us why they belong in that seat.
So we haven't voted yet, just to clarify.
We've voted to modify the agenda already.
We
once.
voted to modify this, to We're voting right now to change what's on paper. As it stands right now, we are doing what's on this paper. We will take a vote, and that is what would change it. So I just want to be clear for everybody. We haven't changed anything yet. We would change something after the vote if this vote passes. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to ask Megan to take the roll in, oh, Mr. Wetzel.
Help my forklift driver mind here, okay?
Sure.
What we just voted on, what's on the screen.
We haven't voted on that.
No, we have not, but that is basically,
I'm sorry, we have voted on that.
that is
That's now
basically
in.
number 10. It's at number 10 almost exactly, am I correct? Something we didn't need to vote on, kind of.
It's a little different.
It's a little different than what's on number 10 in that we're first starting with a pool and then we're going through that process. But it's fairly similar to what's on number 10.
Okay, so right now, what's on the piece of paper without all of our scribbles is what's currently on the tape, or what is currently the process. If you want to change the process to the changes we've just made, then you would vote in favor. Is everyone on the same page?
Davis.
Aye.
Lampy. Bartz.
Aye.
Blanky. Smith.
Aye.
Schmid. Wetzel. Moldenhauer. Motion passed 7-1.
Okay, I think I have my notes in order to shift us through this new process appropriately. So I am going to start with step 1, which is asking the city clerk to draw names. Once the first person's called, you'll have up to 5 minutes to speak to us, and then I will, the city attorney's got the time, and then I will call on people to ask a question, and you'll get a minute to answer that question. And then we'll go to the next person. Sound like a plan? All right, who's our first person?
Steve Board.
Good evening. I must tell you, that has been fun to listen to. As you can see from my resume, I have a degree in architecture, and I'm currently a university business professor. My real-life experiences include more than 35 years in business, including supervisory, managerial, and leadership roles. In that time, we assisted 2 businesses in recovering from poor management, helped grow a national construction company by more than 400% in 8 years, and was a lead member of a startup minority business that grew to more than 240 employees and $80 million in revenue in 10 years. My wife Pat and I moved to Watertown in January 2012. Prior to that, our children lived here, and I was involved as a member of the board of a nonprofit based here in Watertown from December 2001 through December 2011. So in one way or another, I've been involved in Watertown since 2001. Beginning in 2012, we developed an internship program at the Capitol that introduced our students to state government and state government to our students. Ultimately, that relationship has brought many from state government to Watertown, including the governor and lieutenant governor, 3 Supreme Court justices, various state representatives and senators. Senator Johnson has been here twice, and both Representatives Fitzgerald and Representative Sensenbrenner have been here. Our leadership breakfast and leader-to-leader conference have brought business leaders from across the country to Watertown. We have worked to create relationships with these individuals to assist our university, but also the city of Watertown. Approximately 5 years ago, we were driving back from Madison with some other business leaders discussing our fair city. We determined that it was appropriate for us to gather together the many organizations in the city who were doing great things and attempt to provide a conduit to share that good news. Now called the Collaboration Team, it strives to share the positive news of the happenings in Watertown. Our belief is that that group has helped create much positive energy within the city, and to a small degree, helped change the conversation. 2021 was the 100th anniversary of the Chamber of Commerce, and we thought it appropriate to celebrate that milestone. The community celebration that began that year was a great success, and we will celebrate year 3 on June 24th. As Mr. Berg said, I ran for this seat in 2019 and lost. But that did not stop our participation within the city. Today, I'm on several commissions, many of the city commissions approved and appointed by Mayor David. I'm the chairman of the board for the Watertown Area Chamber of Commerce, chairman of the city's Historic Preservation and Downtown Design Commission, a member of the Tourism Commission and the Airport Commission, serve on the Main Street Reconstruction Task Force, a member of the Main Street Board, a member of the Historic Society, and a member of Calvary Baptist Church. Previously, I was a member of the city's Planning Commission and the board of Watertown Rotary. We have also volunteered for many activities and events. So you see, we have strived to build relationships within the city that we very much enjoy, while we actively participate in moving the city forward. We'd like to think it is morning in Watertown, to use President Reagan's phrase. Much has been accomplished, and there's much more left to do. My commitment is to be part of the positive energy that is moving Watertown forward. Thanks for the opportunity. That was under 5 minutes, right, Steve? Do you want to answer questions now, Mayor, or later?
I'm out of water already. Sorry, everybody. All right, thank you, Mr. Board. Who has a question for Mr. Board?
Now or?
Am I doing that wrong?
I think so.
Order was to have all of them give their speeches and then ask one question and have all of us have a minute to answer that question.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, thank you, Mr. Board. Megan.
Nick McGriff.
Good evening. So my name is Nick McGriff. You guys may have heard of me. So in December, I decided to run for city council, largely because the incumbent had decided not to run, and I was encouraged by that. And this is my first run into politics, and it's been quite a ride. So, as many of you have heard, I lost by 2 votes. I did get 50% of the votes, and that was a little disheartening. In my opinion, I also got 315 votes, which, in my opinion, is qualification enough. But I'm also here asking for 8 more votes. So I've lived in Watertown since 2007, and in that time I have worked for various mechanical contractors and electrical contractors, and a lot of my experience is in construction, is in the construction process. I'm very familiar with bidding on the other side than most of you guys see, and so I feel that that makes me uniquely qualified, given our city is growing, and that's what we're looking to do. I also love this town. That was another large part of my decision to run, and I want to see what is best for the city. That's all I have.
Thank you. Megan.
Terry Bear.
Well, I'm Terry Bear. Meet Nick. Kind of feel like he's our primary candidate since he's sitting closest to the podium. It's the first time I've been in this room here besides traffic court, I think. But primary reason that I'm running is because I'm perplexed at the fact that he didn't just automatically fill the position. Common sense logic to me suggests he should. I don't understand the legalities of the process. I don't understand how you come to these terms or these decisions. Obviously, the decision was made that there's going to be this process. So I entered the process, I guess, sort of after the fact, after the actual running went down. I don't know why the primary guy didn't take the oath either, but it's irrelevant. But just sitting here, I kind of make the observation, everybody's kind of scratching their head, and I'm still scratching my head. Like, how complicated does this got to be? I don't get it. as we have the 4 candidates sitting out here, and you guys are all going back and forth on what are we gonna do and how are we gonna do it, that seems like that should be answered before we're sitting here. And I was handed this as I walked in, as maybe everybody else was, but as a candidate running for the position, I think I should add a little bit of a heads up on that. But I wasn't prepared. I'm not a public speaker, but I've got a couple of things that I'd like to share. If you should choose to vote for someone other than Nick here, I'd like to be considered a candidate, of course. I'd like to be the eyes and ears of the residents of my district and beyond. I can contribute my knowledge and experience as a multi-business owner, realtor, and lifetime resident of Watertown to the continued growth and development of the city of Watertown. I feel I'd offer fresh ideas to the council in regards to decisions involving various aspects of the city, whether it be for financial benefit of the community or just to help things function smoother on a day-to-day basis. Case in point. Assist with gathering information, details regarding upcoming budgets, decisions, elections. Provide independent opinions and community feedback on upcoming developments, decisions, while maintaining order and civility in the presentation of the same. Provide a viewpoint of a typical, unbiased, lifetime, 50-plus year resident of Watertown that's utilized nearly all the services and all the businesses that the community has to offer. As an experienced entrepreneurial individual, I'm not afraid to think outside the box, speak what I'm actually thinking. When it comes to implementing things, making improvements, and taking risks, I understand the challenges faced by individuals, businesses, and communities with ever-changing variables that surround us. I realize the value in prioritizing when it comes to creating budgets, addressing unanticipated surprises, case in point, I guess, again. And because, quote unquote, because that's how it's always been done, isn't always the best course of action or the best response as we plan for the future of ourselves, our families, or our community. I'm ready to come up and share some creative ideas and concepts to keep the city moving in the right direction. I guess to kind of preface this a little bit, I filled out the whole one-page, I forget what it was titled, for qualifications, letter of interest. That's what I filled out. And that's what I thought I was filling out, was a letter of interest, which I did. Hand wrote it, filled in the blanks. Wasn't asked for any more information, really didn't give any more information. And then I received an email, said to be here. I get here, and I'm handed this. It's a little perplexing to me how it functions. But again, should you find it outside of Nick here to maintain the position he's already been voted for, I guess I'd like to be considered for a candidate. And again, I'm a lifetime resident, got 8 kids, raised them, went through the school district here in Watertown myself. I'm very familiar with the ins and outs. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Tom Coles.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tom Coles. 6 years ago, my wife and I moved here from Fort Atkinson. We didn't know much about the city of Watertown, but we loved the house that we bought, and we've grown to love this city. About a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I retired. I was working as working for a manufacturing plant. I've worked most of my life in manufacturing. I've done everything on a floor, and I've been a plant manager. When I retired, I decided I was going to be looking for ways to serve my community, to give back. I've always been a very busy person. Working in manufacturing, we work a lot of hours, we work a lot of weekends. I haven't had the time to do the kind of things like I want to do right now, that I have the time. So since I've retired, I've signed up and helped out in the last election. I've been working with just started working with the Jefferson County Literacy Council to help with them, tutoring people in English as a second language, citizenship tests, having people get their GEDs, work with them on that. So I'm going to be starting doing that. Been doing a lot of community theater, and we do outreach to the local old age homes. We take shows to them, and I'm also been involved in the productions for the local theater group. I'll ask you all to come to see our play that's coming up this summer, The Music Man. And so what do I have to offer? Well, I've dealt with a wide range of people from owners of companies down to people who worked on the floor. I've worked with people who can't speak English. In fact, I started working in manufacturing during the summers when I was going to college. I worked at Usinger Sausage in Milwaukee, and German was the primary language. So I know what it's like to be in a situation where you have trouble speaking to people. I've have the time. I know that being a city council person, you get a lot of calls at all hours. You're busy a lot, and so I have time to talk to people. When I was younger, I had a chance. I spent a lot of time with my grandfather, and we lived in Milwaukee, and he took me to every political thing that he could, to council meetings. He took me to church when we'd have a speaker, and I had a chance to know what it's like to work with people, what it's like to be in a situation like this. When I got out of college, for a brief period, I was working on newspapers, and I covered council meetings. The most important thing I think I can give is that I listen. I'd be willing to listen to anybody. I've been impressed by Mary McFarland, how she listens at meetings with the people when she has outreach meetings. That's what I'd like to continue. I'll be a representative for the people of the district if you chose me, and that'll be it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now that each applicant has presented, I will ask council members if they have a question. And then we will have everyone answer that question for up to 1 minute. Any questions from our common council members for our applicants? Mr. Lampy.
I do.
Before you start, sir, if you would, gentlemen, just maybe line up at the podium in the order that you presented. And then Mr. Lampy can start his question. We'll let him get up there first.
May I?
Sir.
Okay. In the past 3 elections, we've seen the majority of the voters in District 3 elect council candidates who've supported the city's strategy on community growth and administration. So why are you the best candidate to champion the 3rd District's interest in these areas?
You want us all just to answer in order?
Yes, please.
Well, a couple reasons. I think I've demonstrated over the past 9 or 10 years that I'm involved in the community growth already. The things I see that are needed here in town are workforce housing, some industrial development and land needs to be provided, and some other things that need to occur. And I demonstrated the ability to grow businesses in the past as well.
Thank you. Mr. McGriff?
So, once again, I'll point out that I was picked by the voters with 315 votes. But I would also point out that I believe my construction experience makes me uniquely qualified, given that the city is growing, and there have been a couple of projects that, with all due respect, could have gone a little better. And I think my construction experience would be useful for topics like that.
Thank you. Mr. Baird?
Well, as I mentioned, lifetime resident of Watertown, got 8 kids. I've owned 5 businesses. I actually ran all 5 businesses at once, all based here in Watertown. A couple of them are, well, they're still mostly all in operation. I had to sell some because of some health issues myself, but I just completely understand what it takes as far as the footwork prior to starting a business, startup costs, maintaining, and running a good business, reputable business. I think most people have probably, if I was to mention my business being Performance Realty, I started out as Ultimate Realty, Performance Realty. I own First Class Limo. I work for Remax right now. Again, that was a situation where I wound up closing my real estate office because I wound up with medical issues that were debilitating. And that's where it's at. I guess I know what it takes to get things done.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Coles?
I guess the best thing I can offer is the fact that in the 6 years I've been here, I've seen some of the progress that's been made, and I've been impressed. I've been impressed with the way the city has been adapting to things. I've been impressed by some of the things that have happened here, and I guess I'd just like to be a part of that. I've been involved in businesses before. I've run plants, and I've been able to deal with all different types of people, and I think that's what it takes for this job.
Thank you. Any other questions from the Common Council?
I have a question.
Ms. Davis?
So in your applications that you submitted, you spoke a little bit to your community involvement and the different roles that you've played. I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about your why. Why do you want to serve? What is motivating you to serve? And what are some ways that you've already demonstrated this desire to serve the city and the residents of Watertown?
Mr. Board?
Well, I think you serve because you want to be a participant and you want to help other people grow. And I think that's what we've tried to do over the last, like I said, 9-10 years. Some of the things we've done in the community, I mentioned when I spoke earlier, the community celebration that'll happen June 24th brought about 30,000 people into town that hadn't been here before. As part of the Historic Preservation Commission, we have helped fund numerous projects downtown on Main Street that have helped beautify Main Street significantly. And now part of the Main Street Task Force, we're helping to prepare the city for what is going to be a pretty startling project that needs to be planned for. So I think we've done that. I do it because I love this community. I love to be a participant in it, and I enjoy the folks that I get to work with.
Thank you. Mr. McGriff?
And just to repeat the question, because it's, what motivates you, what's your why, and then what are some ways that you've already demonstrated service outside your home and outside your business to the people in Watertown?
Thank you. I've lived in Watertown since 2007. I mentioned that earlier. I'm a firm believer in giving back to the community. And this is my way of giving back to the community, representing the citizens of my district, if I'm given the chance, and doing what's in their best interest. In my time living here, I've seen the city grow, I've seen the city shrink, and I want to contribute to that growth and ensure that growth happens, not shrinking. That's what drives me.
Mr. Bear? And Ms. Davis, if you want to repeat, you go right ahead.
What's your why, and what are some ways you've demonstrated service outside your home and your business to the city?
Why is because I've chosen to make my life here in Watertown. I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. I having a whole slew of kids and a lot of businesses going at one time kind of dictated my time frame and my life. Now I'm down to one child at home and a couple operating businesses, and I got a lot more time on my hands. I guess I've seen a lot of different things through different generations, through the school systems, different things that have developed, controversies that have come up now with new social media. Everybody's got an opinion. And I think maybe I represent a category of people that are not primary politicians, as I've always been one to vote, but that's pretty much where it ended with me. Got an opinion like everybody else, but my time was very limited to be involved, aside from my businesses, which I run in Watertown.
Thank you. Mr. Coles?
Why? I think really it's because I've grown to really love this city. I've enjoyed, I walk 5 miles a day through the whole city, just because I need to do that for my health. And I think I have a lot to offer from my background and from just my enthusiasm ability. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Any other alders on questions for these gentlemen? All right. Thank you, sirs. You may take a seat. I just want to put this in people's heads. I did peek at my cheat sheet for after this item is over to see if we need to take like a 3-minute break for everyone to, we don't have to, but I want people to know I'm pondering it. So we have now successfully completed step 4. We interjected or added in a step here, and this is to open it up for comment and discussion amongst our alder people. So we will have that comment open and closed, and after that, I will seek nominations for first and second. So who would like to comment during this discussion period? Mr. Blanky?
So first of all, I want to thank the 4 people for coming out and your willingness to serve. We've had a severe lack of good candidates running. In fact, that was part of the rationale of the council raising the salaries of elected officials recently, because we weren't getting enough people running. So to see 4 people come in and put forth their efforts for this is encouraging. I'd love to see this in an election. That being said, I'd love to see this in an election. An election, we've all done it. It's hard. It's a lot of work. That work shows a certain amount of determination and a certain amount of stamina, and the fact that someone is going to put forth all of that effort. Now, whoever we wind up voting for, I just want to say it's not a vote against anyone. I don't feel that way, because these are 4 incredibly qualified candidates. But I think that Nick has shown that he has put forth the effort. He's been here at every meeting since that election, and definitely would be our best choice.
Thank you.
I'll let John go first.
Oh,
I can't see your finger behind the camera, if that's what you're doing.
I know, I keep
Okay.
raising it, I'm sorry.
No, I legitimately could not see it behind my camera. Okay, Mr. Lampy.
I guess where I want to start is, again, I just parrot the words that Alderperson Blanky has said, and thank you for coming out and putting yourself in the candidate process. I do think that we do have, a challenging choice because of the quality of folks that we have out here. I do want to interject that in terms of volunteer activities, if the candidates who do not make it through here, or other people who are in the audience and interested in city business, there are 26 city commissions and boards out there to volunteer for and serve on. I believe 22 of them, at least, have citizen appointees, and we've got at least 3 with vacancies in the City Bike and Pedestrian Trail, Tourism, and the Zoning Board of Appeals right now. And you can do great things on commissions. I served on the library board for about 5 years before I joined the council, and we built a brand new beautiful library. We have the City Bike and Pedestrian Trail. Did a lot of great things. There's a beautiful trail that extends all the way out toward Exonia now. You can do a lot of good work. You don't necessarily have to be on the council if you want to make a difference in the community. And I furthermore would basically put a plug out there for a few of the commissions that touch people's lives pretty closely, like the Housing Authority, the Library Board, and Watertown Family Connections, all of which have some ties to some of the disadvantaged folks in our community and really allow you to feel like you're doing good in those particular areas. As it pertains to the candidates that we have ahead of us, I, again, agree with Mr. Malinke's comments regarding how hard it is to put yourself out there as a candidate and basically put yourself through an election. And that's really why I put in my top 2 candidates here, the 2 folks who have done that, who basically put themselves out in front of the voters. I'm speaking about Mr. Board, and I'm speaking also about Mr. McGriff. Both have done the homework, like you said, that all the rest of us have, to put themselves out there and put themselves through elections. So I am definitely putting those 2 in sort of my top candidates selections as we're moving forward. The question that I asked the candidates a moment ago was pretty key for me, though, in terms of trying to figure out between those 2 candidates which one am I more likely to support. We've seen Chris Ritten, who isn't here, but definitely had an opportunity to shape the council agenda, finances, and a few other things in the past number of years. We saw that there was strong support in that district for the work that Alderperson Ritten did. And then we saw another election that came through, and since we don't really have a chance to go back out to election again, we have to essentially interpret the will of the voters there. And given 2 relatively unknown candidates, and I don't want to say that because there was a lot of work done, I think, by both camps to get their name out during the election cycle, but it was a very sort of issue-driven campaign, if I remember it. There was definitely people who were saying, we want to drive the city forward. That candidate particularly got the majority of the votes in the last election. There are people who basically say, let's take a step back, reevaluate where the city is, and perhaps take a different approach. That candidate did not make it through as the majority candidate in the last election. So based on that, I mean, I am very much leaning toward the candidate that we have ahead of us tonight, who basically has a lot of ties and experience in basically developing the current agenda of the city, our growth plan, and tying people together, and that is Mr. Board.
Okay. Mr. Schmidt?
I'll echo again my colleagues across the room. I appreciate all 4 of you for showing up, because in the past, since I've been on here, in 4 years, we've gone through this process before where people have applied and not shown up, or people have had issues with the city and not shown up to meetings. So thank you for taking the time out, not only applying, but also showing up to say why you feel you should be in this position. So that much I do appreciate. I wanted to make my objections initially were because I wanted to hear from all 4 candidates first. I wanted them to tell me, 1, why they want to serve in the community and what qualifies them to serve in this capacity. It also gives me a chance to listen to how they interact with us, how they interpret with their colleagues, and how confident they are in their abilities with their skill sets and the tool chest that they bring to the table to maybe fill a niche that we don't already have present. Because we always have blind spots. We all need somebody to come in and plug that hole for us, so to speak. And I heard 4 very different set of skill sets that could provide a unique perspective from what they have from life experiences. That said, I'm with Alderman Lampy in regards to, I wasn't for sure which way I was going to lean because I didn't know a lot about any of them. Like some of the things I'd read even about all 4 that were new to me that I didn't know, and I've been in town for going on 10 years this fall. I appreciate Mr. Cole's unique experience in being multilingual, only being here 6 years and already reaching out to Jefferson County, working with GED, working with citizenship processing, and working with ESL training. That's a huge step and it's a huge commitment, wanting to get involved and feeling confident and safe enough to walk about our city, in a 5-mile loop on a regular basis. That says a lot about what our community as a whole is. Because a lot of communities, I don't think you'd feel comfortable doing that. So that says a lot of what we've already done. I appreciate Mr. Board's forward-thinking and strategic experience because that demonstrates tangible results. That's something we can see, we can touch, and we can validate relatively easily. The fact that Mr. I want to get the right, Baird has run a number of businesses successfully is no small undertaking because most businesses fail in the first 2 to 4 years. That's a huge thing. And Mr. McGriff he ran an election. He got signatures. That's, to go knock on doors of complete strangers, it's not an easy thing to do unless you have an extremely outgoing personality. Or you just don't care what people think and you're going to do what you think is right. Okay, that's also what I'm getting a little bit from your camp, is you have a perspective that is unique to your work history and who you are as a person. And that also could be a benefit to strength. Now that I've touched on all four, I've got my list narrowed down to two, and that would be Mr. Coles and Mr. Borden would be my two. That I'm two.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to comment?
I'd like to comment.
Ms. Davis.
So again, thank you all for coming tonight. This is a challenging decision, not one that I take lightly. I've put a lot of thought, and what I tend to do is whenever I'm trying to wonder and determine what the best approach it is, I usually try to get into the code, into the ordinances. It often provides me some guidance. And so the state code actually defines what we have going on here. It defines a vacancy for a public office, and it describes how a vacancy is caused. There are actually 13 different ways, according to the state code, that a vacancy for a public office comes about. I won't read them all to you, but the first one is the incumbent dies. The incumbent resigns is number 2. The incumbent is removed. The incumbent moves away. But number 7 is interesting because it is exactly what we're dealing with right here. Number 7 says, a person elected or appointed or re-elected or reappointed, neglects or refuses to take and file the official oath or to execute or renew the official bond if required, or to file the oath or bond as prescribed by law. So that's exactly what we had happen. Someone who was elected did not take the oath of office. And that falls under the definition of a vacated public office. Okay, so we have a vacated public office, and obviously this isn't the first time what we're experiencing here in Watertown has happened. It actually made it to the state code. Okay, so then what do we do when an office is vacated? Well, we do what we're doing right now. We've come to a decision, we've worked it out, we've got a process. But how we make the decision changes a little bit. What we have to do then is to determine who is best equipped, best qualified to fill the open position. And so, like Mr. Lampy, my question was also significant because what I asked was, how have you already served? How have you demonstrated your service to the people of Watertown? Because that's really key. This is something that requires a desire to put others before yourself and to serve, sometimes sacrificially. It takes long hours, it takes commitment, it takes study, it takes preparation. And so as we listen to the candidates, all excellent individuals of high quality, for me, there were again 2, but I would say that Mr. Board has definitely shown a commitment year in, year out to serve on committees, to sacrifice, and to really pour out for the community of Watertown.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to comment? Mr. Smith.
Well, like all the earlier speakers, I want to thank everybody that came out tonight, all of those who spoke to our council, and especially the 4 candidates who have offered themselves for public service. You are to be commended. I am supporting Mr. McGriff. From the very outset in the election process, back in December, he began collecting signatures. He competed in the election for over 4 months, primarily going door to door, met virtually everybody, or at least attempted to, within the district because he wanted to serve that district well for the betterment of our community. What's been referred to, and what I think is tremendously unfortunate, is that Mr. McGriff ran up against a political buzzsaw. His opponent was supported by a political action committee from Washington, D.C. this political action committee sent out 3 expensive, professionally tailored mailings to every address in the district. Well, Mr. McGriff is going door to door, meeting people. A political action committee in Washington, D.C. is basically running the campaign for his opponent. Now, the most important thing is elections, municipal elections in Wisconsin are intended to be nonpartisan. We don't run as Republicans or Democrats. We run as citizens. And yet, the Political Action Committee that funded 3 district-wide mailings was a partisan political action committee, and notwithstanding that, Mr. McGriff, against all those odds, received 315 votes and lost by only 2 votes. Political action committees are not the way we're supposed to run elections in Watertown. The door-to-door approach is what people appreciate. It's how you meet the people you're going to serve. It's how you get the flavor for the district. It's how you begin to get the sense of how you can best represent this portion of our city. And you can quantify this any way you want, but against all those odds, to lose an election by 2 votes against all that adversity suggests to me that Mr. McGriff would have won by a lot but for that intervention. His interest in serving the city from the outset of the election process counts volumes with me. Campaigning hard in the snow, door to door, throughout the district counts a lot as well. Mr. McGriff has shown great commitment to this district and to our city. He is an excellent first-time candidate and will add a lot to the city council. Voting for Mr. McGriff will be honoring the election and the election process, and it will, most importantly, honor the 315 people that went out to vote for him from his personal contact with them, not from some glossy flyer that came from Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to come? Mr. Moldenhauer.
I don't have a lot to say, but I will say we have a lot of people in this council chamber tonight. I wish it was like that all the time. And if we could we give them a round of applause?
Sure.
Everybody showing up here tonight. I think it's very important people get involved in government. And transparency is the best there is. And I will go along. I'm going to support Mr. McGriff because he was out there. I know what it is to campaign. And mine I did with a walker. He had an advantage over me there. But it's a lot of work. And I give him a lot of credit for what he did. That's how I'm going to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Wetzel.
I would just say, for District 3, Mr. Bear is the most qualified because he has 8 kids and Alder Ritten had 7. So,
I think he had 6.
it's only 6?
I
Oh,
think he
okay.
had 6,
All
yeah.
right, okay.
Oh, Mr. Bear, yeah, come on, I'm just kidding.
I mean, with this election, the closeness of it, we all up here appreciate going out from December to April in the cold with your hands freezing and everything else freezing and knocking on doors and everything like that. The election came up, and then we had this situation come up. So I divorced what happened in the past, starting fresh anew when this new appointment was called. And looking at past history, as I appreciate Alder Davis's question, what have you done so far in the past in the city? And long story short, I see Mr. Board is the one who has given himself to the city already, not to slight anybody else who has not. I know there's obligations that someone may want to serve, as Mr. Cole said, but you're not able to because of health reasons, family reasons, job reasons. Not to disqualify anybody for that reason, but Mr. Board has shown himself a worthy person volunteering and helping the city become great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Mr. Bartz, anything that you'd like to add? I would make sure you have an opportunity if you'd like one. Anybody else in the room? Okay. We have completed comments from council. Our next step is to take nominations. We will take nominations with a first and a second and create a pool. Okay. I will open it for nominations. Mr. Moldenhauer.
I wish to nominate Mr. McGriff.
Is there a second for McGriff? So we have a motion for Mr. McGriff by Mr. Moldenhauer, seconded by Mr. Blanky. Are there any other motions for nominations? Mr. Lampe?
To nominate Mr. Board.
We have a first for Mr. Board. Is there a second? And so first by Lampe, second by Davis. Any other nominations? Mr. Schmidt?
I'll nominate Mr. Coles.
Is there a second for Mr. Coles? Okay, that one fails. Any other nominations? Okay, so I'm going to close nominations. We have in the pool, Mr. McGriff, Mr. Board. The next step, I'm saying this while you shake your head yes or no. The next step is we will take a vote on Mr. McGriff. No.
The next step would be for a vote for either Mr. McGriff or Mr. Board. And each council member would be voting for one of the two candidates.
Oh, because we're at two
in the
people.
pool.
Okay, so in a moment, Megan's going to call your name and you should vote a last name. That's what you're saying? You should vote Board or McGriff? Is everyone on that page? I don't want any questions. Mr. Bartz, are you tracking with us? In a moment, we're going to take a vote, and you will vote a last name of either McGriff or Board.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, one last look around the room. Everyone's clear on what we're doing? Megan?
Davis. Lampe. Bartz.
Board.
Blanky.
McGriff.
Smith.
McGriff.
Schmidt.
Board.
Wetzel.
Board.
Moldenhauer. Board got 5 votes. McGriff 3.
Okay. Before we proceed to the next step, I don't often get an opportunity to say this, but I'm going to echo I get an opportunity to say I can echo people. You're all very good, but Mr. Lampe made a great point. I have vacancies on on many boards and commissions. If you're interested in being a part of that, I would ask that you reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation and see if we have the right place for you. And I want to thank everyone for their willingness. It's not easy to be in any one of these positions, including the people sitting up here. I know how hard it is to stand there. I stood there myself and did it. So with that, our next step is for our appointed alderperson to take their oath, correct? So, Megan, and I will invite you up to take an oath. Mr. Board, congratulations. Please join us up front. there a packet over there? What's that? Okay. I'm gonna get out of this one. 5-3. Which way are you taking this picture, Ed? So I'm not in it. So come a little closer together so you're in a photo, but not this. Congratulations. Okay. That does complete old business. I want to just do a look around the room. Does anyone need 2 minutes? If so, just politely shake your head. Okay, we shall continue. Just want to offer it. You never know. Sometimes people need a restroom or water. Okay. All right. We've completed old business. Let's go to communications and recommendations. The first is pertaining to Welsh Road Highway Safety Improvement Program. This is the HISSUP grant. This is a project update and a public information hearing. Ashley, our consultant, has hung on for this presentation. So Ashley, and I believe Andrew is on as well, but I think I'm turning it over to Ashley.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Mayor McFarland and members of the council, I'm Ashley Nelson with Robert E. Lee, Design Project Manager for Welsh Road Safety Improvement Project. I'm here to present project details. Welsh Road is a safety improvement project located at the State Highway 26 overpass. The project proposes placing guardrail in front of the 4 bridge columns and chevron signs along the curvature of the road approaching the bridge to improve safety. Construction is scheduled in 2024, and Welsh Road will remain open to traffic during construction. We anticipate that there will be shoulder closures with the potential of lane closures with flagging operations to install the guardrail along the road. Currently, the project is going through the environmental process with design completion for an August 1st, 2023 PS&E. And that's it in a nutshell.
So this is a requirement, I believe, which is why we had to have this public information hearing. So does anyone have questions for Ashley on this project? We've talked about it a few times at council because we applied for the grant. Any questions for Ashley or Andrew? All right, fantastic. Ashley, none in the room. Thanks for hanging on. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is the presentation of our Distinguished Service Awards, and looking out, it looks like I've lost one. So I will only have Mr. Romline to present this evening. Mr. Licht has exited the building. And Mr. Ritten, I believe, was at a Climb and Canter game. So, Mr. Romline, come on up, if you would, please. You know, I remember sitting in your seats watching John present these, so moments like these are always when I remember Mayor David for some reason, as he would present these recognitions. And I always thought how lucky we are to have people willing to serve. We just experienced that in full effect. And I was excited, and I took a lot of care in fashioning the quote I put on these. So this is a Distinguished Service Award, and it's recognizing Mr. Romline as the representative of the 9th District from April 2021 to 2023. This is in recognition of your years of dedicated service to the city of Watertown and its citizens. The quote I have on here is by Condoleezza Rice, and it is, "There's no greater challenge and there's no greater honor than to be in public service." And I know that Mr. Romline pushed us on certain topics. He made us think more technologically than I ever even thought before. We talked about industrial revolutions. We talked about public works. We talked about pipe diameters. We had education sessions, and they were important. That skill set was very valuable to us. And I know my city team particularly those on Public Works, sincerely appreciated all of the work that you gave to them and the time and attention and support that you gave them as well. So I appreciate you, and there's plenty of boards and commissions if you want to come back and join us. So you take a little break and come on back. So did you want to say anything?
Yeah, just one thing. You know, it really is great to work with a mayor like this that really knows what the hell she's doing and puts it to work.
Well, in that case, keep the microphone. I'm just kidding. All right, we'll take this quick photo and then we'll give you some applause.
Okay.
Please join me in thanking you. All right, we obviously also were going to honor Mr. Licht and Mr. Ritten for their service. I will have to just do that presentation to them in my office, apparently. Okay, next item is new business. Here we have committee appointments. Is there a
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Mr. Blanky. Great. Now I've bored Bartz and Blanky. Don't get mad at me, any of the three of you. It's like when I kept calling Wetzel. Yeah, I'll take a second. Okay, sorry about that. There was a motion by Mr. Blanky and a second by Mr. Wetzel. Discussion? Yeah. Okay. Sure. Thank you. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Oh, Mr. Bartz, I'm sorry, I called it too fast. Was that in favor?
Yes.
Okay. No, anyone opposed? And an abstain? Very good. Okay. Our next item is the accounts payable. Mr. Romline, did you want to call him one last time? All right, motion by, thankfully he's carried on the tradition. Motion by Mr. Moldenhauer. Is there a second to that? Mr. Schmid. Discussion from anybody on the accounts? Megan.
Moldenhauer. Davis.
Aye.
Lampy.
Aye.
Board. Bartz.
Aye.
Blanky.
Aye.
Smith. Schmidt. Wetzel. Motion passed 9-0.
Our only miscellaneous business this month is the payroll summary from May 3rd to May 16th. Anybody on that one? All right, let's go to licenses then. This is to review and approve a temporary secondary location for Kellermeister Beverages, doing business as Brewfinity Brewing at the Benson Family Town Square Sounds of Summer Concert Series on June 24th and August 26th. Mr. Lampy. Motion to approve by Mr. Lampy. Is there a second to that? Second by Mr. Smith. Questions? Yes, Ms. Davis.
So I think it's a long night, and I hate to do this, but I do think this needs some discussion. So this is something that I had to learn about, and it's a new to me type of permit. So, you know, I've spent the last probably 36 hours kind of poring over this, trying to wrap my mind around it, and so I'm self-taught, and admittedly may not have it all correct. So please, at any point, interject if I get it wrong. And correct me.
She's looking at you.
Yes, correct me, please do, because I want to make sure the information is very, very accurate. You on the council may be like I am, and I had no idea that there was something called a brewer's permit. Most of the time when things come to us, they are licenses that our city gives, Class A, Class B, Class C, for alcohol. But a brewer's permit is different. The city, as I understand it, gives licenses, whereas the state gives permits. And a brewer's permit allows a brewery to, of course, brew, but also to have open container, closed container on their premises. But they're also allowed to have what is called an off-site retail location. Now, what we're being asked to vote on tonight has a different terminology. They're calling it a temporary secondary location. And that threw me off at first because I couldn't find anything about that anywhere. But what the state statute calls it is an off-site retail location. And what that means is that the brewery can have one off-site retail location. And they get that off-site retail location through application to the DOR. So tonight we're being asked to permit this on the town square. But I really do think, as I got into this and dug around, that we should discuss it. If not now, maybe to put it on the agenda for later to talk about brewers' permits and off-site locations, and I'll explain in a little bit. So when the brewery wants an off-site location, and they can only have one, they make application to the DOR. The DOR gets their application, and then they take a look at it for a number of things. One of the things they're looking at is to make sure they only have one off-site location, because they can't have two. They look to see that there's no other license at that same location. And then the third one is significant. They look to see if that location would interfere with any municipality laws or ordinances. And so they take a look at that. So at this point, Brewfinity is asking us to give them an approval as a city to say it's okay for them to put an off-site location on the town square. They're doing what I would do in their position. They're getting their ducks in a row. They want a letter from us that they can take with their application, maybe staple it together. And so when it gets sent in, DOR can look at it and say, oh, okay, the city's okay with this, so we'll go ahead and approve this. Well, here's the deal. And this is where I need the attorney to step in. Didn't have a whole lot of time to talk about this. There actually is an ordinance that I believe is in conflict. And I don't know if you want to look it up, but I actually have handouts. I can pass them around. It's ordinance 410-52B, and it has to do with possession of alcohol beverage on public ways. So it's 410-52B. But basically, I don't know how this came about, but it says, no person shall have in his possession any open can, bottle, or other receptacle containing alcohol beverages or drink from any of these things on the Watertown Riverwalk and the contiguous public property between the Cody Street Bridge and the Milwaukee Street Bridge along both the east side and the west side of the Rock River. And understandably, with the Town Square addition, the contiguous public property is now much larger than it probably was when this was written. There is one exception. Actually, there's two, but there's one exception. This section shall not apply to such events for which a Class B temporary picnic license has been obtained. But we're not talking about a temporary picnic license, are we? We're talking about the brewer's off-site retail location permit from the state. So it would appear that this is in violation to the location, and it would not allow us to have the off-site location there. Now, understandably, you could shrug your shoulders and say, this was written a long time ago, that's not what it meant, things have changed. Okay, that's fine. But as council members, we operate within ordinances, within laws. So if there's something that's in conflict, we have to go through the process to change it, and then it's in good shape for approval. Now, I'll hit it on over to you, Mr. Cheesebro, and you can say, we were kind of talking about this, and you can kind of say if that ordinance interpretation has any degree of validity.
It does have validity. The current ordinance does not allow for an exception to subsection B. The exceptions that are permitted under that ordinance under subsection C, there is one that allows exemption for a temporary closed right-of-way for a city-approved event. However, that only applies to subsection A. So at this point, my recommendation would be that if the city wants to approve the brew pub or the brewery having a off-site location, that they would need to amend this ordinance. They could do that in one of two ways. They could either remove subsection B, or they could amend the exceptions under subsection C sub 2 to be subsection, or to just be this section. In either of those cases, if the council was to instruct the staff to prepare that kind of an ordinance, that could be prepared by the June 20th date, which would allow us to have that ordinance modified with a exception from the council as to the rules. The first event that is considered by this is to be in June 24th, which means that the council does have the authority and the ability to go forward with the provision. They would just need to do so by amending section 410-52. We would not be able to simply do the resolution tonight and then ignore that ordinance. The reason for that is that in order for a council to overcome an ordinance, they have to pass an ordinance at the same level of formality. So this would require an ordinance to be passed. There could be some other arguments that are made. Presumably, This is talking about the Watertown River Walk. The park isn't quite the same as the River Walk, although it's included within the River Walk, or a portion of it is. But I think the clearest method would be if you guys want to pass the brewery and to clear up any confusion about what the park can be used for, would be to amend that exception so that either the Class B picnic license or city-approved events.
Okay. Mr. Lampe, I see your hand going up.
So I heard the options you just put ahead of us, and I'm wondering why there isn't an option to basically do a C that refers to the specific type of temporary off-site license that they are requesting.
That would also be an option.
Okay.
To add that type of license into there. The other note would be that this would still prevent people from being able to have any alcohol on that river walk, if this is the interpretation that we're going with for that section.
Unless they have a Class B.
Yeah.
Unless they have a Class B picnic license.
Mr. Schmidt?
Can I make a motion on this?
You obviously can. I would love, if you're willing to make sure that, since we would be on a tight timeline, that we're giving him clear direction on
Yes.
what to craft. So I heard him say what he thinks we should craft. I heard you
I want to do something else.
want to do
Yeah.
something else.
I wanna do
So
something else, that's fine.
you want to make a motion to
Do
direct
something
him?
else. Yeah.
Well, you can make whatever motion you'd like. Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion that we table the specific agenda item until we can have this specific ordinance reviewed and modified appropriately at public safety, to give us the due diligence to properly craft the wording to make sure that we're addressing the issue at hand, and to ensure we're not opening up an unforeseen can of worms.
Okay, so what you made was a motion to table and the date, to the date of, I'm going to say, public safety and welfare meeting and then a council meeting?
Well, to give adequate time.
Adequate time. Okay.
Wouldn't be, earliest would be July unless we have a special safety meeting, because we don't have adequate time between tonight and tomorrow night to review and craft the proper language.
Right, you can have a safety committee meeting, a special one, anytime.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to wait till July.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so there is a motion to table. Is there a second?
I'd second that.
A second by Mr. Moldenhauer. That is not a debatable motion, because I got my cheat sheet. And we need a majority vote. So Megan, will you take the roll on tabling this?
Schmidt? Wetzel?
Aye.
Moldenhauer? Davis?
Aye.
Lampy? Board?
Aye.
Bartz?
Aye.
Blanky?
No.
Smith?
Aye.
Motion passed 7-2.
I have not yet looked at my team in the corner of the room, but I bet you they're wigging out a little. So here's what I want to,
was-
one moment, please. Here's what I want to mention. You're the chair of Public Safety and Welfare. I'm going to ask politely that you host a special meeting so that we can get it on the June 20th council meeting, so that we can, I would ask of you to suspend the rules. We would be out of time. Okay.
I could mention ordinances are passed on publication as well. So
Well, it sounds like the state needs 2 weeks. We will strategize something and we will figure it out. Ms. Davis, I think we're going to move on. All right, let's continue.
One quick thing. Megan, you said that it passed 7-2. It was 8-1. I was the only no vote.
Thank you for
Smith
clarifying
was
that.
no.
He was a yes.
Okay.
He was a yes. Okay, let's go on to our next, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Let's go on to our next item. This is an ordinance, ordinance 23-17. Hey, man. This is to adopt the plan unit development and general development plan for those section areas listed in the Hunter Oaks development. This is here for me and the Plan Commission on its first reading.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Mr. Blanky. Second by Mr. Wetzel. Oh, just set it down, that's okay. Okay. Thank you for staying, Mr. Donovan. Mr. Donovan is here representing Belinsky, if anyone has any questions or comments. Mr. Smith?
Yes, I think this is.
Mr. Smith, is your mic on?
Excuse me?
Is your microphone on?
No, it isn't, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
This is wonderful progress that's being made in a long-standing subdivision on the west side of our city. Lots of tremendous potential. There are a number of us that have been eager to see the progress up the hill occur so that what is going to be the Reagan Park will become a reality, and that's specifically dressed in here. In the public hearing presentation that we had previously, we received the maps of the subdivision progression, much of which is part of this general development plan, and the neighborhood park, the Area 1, which is referred to as an area that will be dedicated at a future point in time. Do we have any idea when that's going to be? Because on the map, it was anticipated that that would be 2024. Now, the prerequisites include a lot of infrastructure that's going to have to be built before the dedication can occur. Is it likely that that would still occur in 2024?
This is on. Hi, John Donovan from Belinsky Homes. It is specifically indicated as a dedication in our general development plan that will be approved by the city, that it will be developed in the year 2024. Phase 1 includes the Reagan Park, if that is the name. And that dedication will take place at, obviously, the end of our construction of Phase 1, the single family, in 2024.
Okay. And I just have one question. How does the term dedication relate to actual ownership? In other words, when will this become city property? Does it need to be conveyed? Does it need to be part of some official action?
Stephen, do you want to answer that? Did you hear the question? Mr. Smith is asking when the park, it says dedicated, when does it actually become our city property?
The current negotiation has been for it to be once the development is completed. So
The
once
phase.
Could you say that again?
Once they've completed the construction of the properties surrounding the park. So
The infrastructure to the park area?
I'm going to go to Mr. Donovan.
Yeah, it's all spelled out in the general development plan, and then it will also be detailed in the developer's agreement that will be negotiated between city and Belinsky on terms. But the intent here is that all of the improvements for Phase 1 would be installed. Then we would then go in for dedication and the city taking ownership on the park plus our improvements that will be public right-of-way at the same time. And that will take place at the end of the construction of that development and that phase.
So
Okay.
I don't know the legal document you're looking for, Mr. Smith, but
I think the most concise answer is we will hash out a development agreement, and we've already been working on it. That's where that will actually be contained. Those documentable deliverables will be in the DA. This PUD in general development plan, once you approve it, that gives us kind of the blessing to finish out the development agreement and bring it back before this body. So we will get there. And before anyone else goes, I asked Brian to attend tonight because you have seen this before, but we had some small adjustments, so it had to come back. So Brian, can you just give us a really quick high level of what those major changes were? That is why it's back before us.
Sure. If you look at if you have the map in front of you, it's basically the purple area was extended to provide access to the park, and it just basically swaps some lots with some of the other development phases.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Yeah.
Just one, or two, I guess. So it says the minimum sizing is gonna drop from 4,300 around to 2,600. Are you saying that they're all gonna be down, or you just want that flexible range to build your lots based on your plan?
Good question.
I believe it covers the same standards that were in the first general development plan, and all it is doing is giving us the flexibility, but the size of that's, I think, determining the pad area of where these homes will be. It has nothing to do, I don't
This
believe.
is the minimum lot requirement shall be reduced
Right.
from 4,350 to 2,600. And
Correct.
it is to give you the flexibility, is what to have it be a smaller lot size potentially.
Correct.
So I think the question is, are you going to have things all at 2,600 square feet, or will you be in a range? I think is your question?
We will follow what we have as plans that are being approved with the general development plan. Those lots are, within the standard of what the table is indicating for our relief. That's all it is.
Anybody else for Mr. Donovan or our city team remotely? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Donovan. Megan?
Blanky?
Aye.
Smith? Smith?
Aye.
Schmidt?
Aye.
Wetzel?
Aye.
Moldenhauer?
Aye.
Davis? Aye. Lampy?
Aye.
Board?
Aye.
Bartz?
Aye.
Motion passed 9-0.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. All right, let's go to resolutions. This is Exhibit 9518. This is a resolution to approve an EMS contract with the town of Milford. This is here from me and the Finance Committee. Yes, Ms. Davis.
Approve this resolution with the town of Milford for EMS.
Motion by Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Lampy. Mr. Chief Tosh? He was giving me the eyes, like he had something to say.
My apologies, there's a correction in the, in your packet. The contract is listed for $7,080. The amount there should have been $2,660. The first number I got from the town of Milford was for a population of 354 people. That was for our current area. So that's the area in Milford we already serve.
Yeah.
What we're actually adding is 133 people. So if we use our formula for the 133 number and then divide it by half the year, that's how I get the 2,660 number.
$2,660.
$60.
Could I have a motion, please, to amend the 780 to 2,660? Motion by Mr. Schmid, second by Mr. Wetzel. Discussion on that? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we are in an amended version. Questions or comments? We cover a vast portion of Milford now. We're adding a small area that the chief just described. And this is just temporary, because we kind of renegotiate these every year with the towns.
Yep.
Anybody on this one? All right, Megan.
Davis? Lampy?
Aye.
Board?
Did we
Oh.
vote on the amendment?
She did a voice vote.
I did. Yep, what's the question? Are you checking math?
No, I'm checking the addendum area.
I don't have a cheat sheet for pausing the vote. I'm not sure what you're checking. Can you describe it to me?
So the.
Give this guy a mic, please. Stephen, grab a microphone.
I'm trying to determine whether the additional described area includes the entire portion that the city will be doing or just the additional area. There's a difference between us having the $7,080 contract for the total area for the city that we would, or the township that we'd be servicing versus if it's the 2,660.
We have a contract already for the remaining portion of the town of Milford.
Correct.
So even if this is for the entire town of Milford, we already have, this would be is this the entire town, or is this?
No, this is an
Right, I know what it is. Yep. What I'm saying is you're questioning if this long piece is just the added area? Who
Correct.
gave this to us?
Jefferson County,
This is just the added area.
just the added
Okay.
area given to me by Jefferson.
Okay. I'm going to restart the vote, just to make sure. So we are voting on an amended version of this resolution, which is just the small area to the tune of $2,066. Megan, please start over.
Davis. Lampy. Board. Bartz.
Aye.
Blanky.
Aye.
Smith. Schmid. Wetzel. Moldenhauer.
Aye.
Very
Motion
good.
passed 9-0.
Thank you, Megan. All right, we have another opportunity from comments from citizens present, if anyone in the room or anyone remotely. All right, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
I would move to adjourn.
Oh, thank you. Motion by Lampy. Who was the second? Second by Schmid. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.